the theory of good versus bad, and also what to do, what justifications or what one tries to do in one's life, whether it has the moral sanctity or not. So the things we do in life, the different activities we are involved in life, they must have the moral sanction. There is something like good and bad. And he says this moral reasoning is the basis for the ethical behavior of individual. We know that in spite of individuals being very much developed in all the aspects, it's also the moral aspect which actually is applauded by the people. And it is the moral reasoning which actually helps an individual to tide over certain circumstances in life. So here he says people behave in certain ways, in certain manners, because as one matures with age, they also develop the moral compass inside them. And in different stages and different age periods, the individuals have different moral stages. That is, the morality also develops step by step. Now, he says in the pre-conventional stage, most children, that is at the child stage, here the personal needs are the most important. And that is when a child is very small in the infant or at the early stages of development. Here, the moral stages is not concerned about what is right or wrong. It is concerned with more of a personal need. So most children exhibit this kind of morality when they are young. Now, also sometimes it so happens that adults also are fixed at some stage and they also may exhibit some sort of child behavior or morality belonging that of a child. But then we see that actually in normal individuals, as one ages, the sort of morality one exhibits also varies. Now, in a stage one, that is in an early stage, we have this punishment versus obedience stage. So if a child misbehaves or has something, the parents try to influence him saying this will lead to this, or this may lead to certain problems. And here, if he is rewarded, he tries to develop the same sort of behavior. If he is punished, he'll try to stay away from such sort of behavior. So here, a person, the authority figure is the parent, and here the child tries to actually obey the parent because he feels that if not, he may be punished. So here it is the punishment versus obedience. That is, if one does not obey, he may be punished. This is the feelings that the child has at this stage, and he tries to follow the rules scrupulously. So if one is punishing more, if a parent punishes more, the child will either try to get away or try to avoid the punishment and try to behave in a good manner. So here it is a sort of trying to oblige by the parental rule or parental control that the child tries to form a moral. That is a moral stance here. The next is instrumental hedonism. Here, Kohlberg says this is the second stage. The person tries to see if behaving in a particular manner, whether it will actually help him or not, whether he will be rewarded or not. So here, the personal gain is also their own interest, but here there is less concern for others' needs. The guiding philosophy in this stage is, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. So also in this stage, you will see that the others' views are given importance. That is, they know what is authorities and societies. They give importance to the expectations of the parents and others. But at the same time, this kind of moral reasoning that is seen here is, they will try to see if it is benefits of them or not personally. The third stage is good boy or good girl mentality. Here, the morality is in such a stage that the person tries to get applauded for his activities. He'll behave in such ways that he will seek approval from the people around him. He wants to be validated. He feels that all the works done by him should be recognized, should be applauded, should be credited for. And here we see that fulfilling all the social obligations comes because they want to gain acceptance from the social world. The next stage is authority versus social order. They think here they again have the authority figure, but then here they want also to maintain the social order. They feel that everybody should follow a particular rule or a particular moral conduct, so that this will actually help. And this is a social law they feel, and they feel obliged that other persons also must follow certain social rules so that it will benefit all. Here in these stages, what we find is the focus is always on what his internal conscience feels and what they feel are the universal rights should be, and they feel that the existing rules or laws should be scrupulously followed. Now, the stage 5 is the morality of contract or individual rights and democratically accepted laws. Here, they feel that the public interest and welfare of all the people should be taken into consideration, and he think there is a particular discriminatory or something prejudicial happens in nature, they will think of alternate ways of dealing instead of fighting it, and with such situations, and they will also sometimes voice out their opinions if somebody does something wrong. Here, what they do is the society rules should be, they feel that the society rules are because they should be for the public interest and the welfare of the members. So from their personal need from an early stage, we see the gradual growing of morality where they try to accommodate all, and they feel that the democratical rights of all people should be accepted. The last stage of the moral theory of development is they feel that there should be moral reasoning, and also they should be idealistic, and a person should also try to align his own feelings of morality with that of the world, that they feel that obligation to the social contract or the social nature of the things, there are some things right and there are some things wrong, and based on the legal, societal and personal rules, a person should try to see what is good, and then with certain aspect of moral reasoning, he should do what is good for all. And here we see like people like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and Nelson Mandela, who try to think that the social welfare of all the people will help the society. Now, this is the ultimate stage of moral reasoning. So there are moral reasonings from personal standpoint to the societal standpoint, and gradually the individual tries to develop from what is only good for him, or from a sort of social contract where everybody helps, one helps the other because the other helps him back to a stage where they feel that there should be some moral binding for all the people, and these social rules and laws are because of the social obligatory conditions, and this is where we see the highest form of moral reasoning. Coming to the critical evaluation of Kohlberg's theory, we know that there are moral dilemmas in every life, in everybody's life. People wonder what to do, what is correct and what is wrong, and what one should do in a particular situation. And we know that this varies across the cultures. But then Kohlberg, he specifically tried to stick to the Western thoughts, and it is somewhat very abstract and idealistic and theoretical. And individuals, sometimes it is not that they progress from one stage to another linearly. There is sometimes regression. Sometimes we see them going back. So the dilemmas are there between moral thinking and moral acting. Because of the certain conditions, we may think something, but act in a different way. So these were not addressed in Kohlberg's theory, but in spite of it, he tried to reason out that there are certain ways in which the individual advances morally from one stage to another. So we have seen that there are different theories of development, and these theories of development have helped us to understand how an individual grows in all aspects, either psychosexual aspects or the developmental aspects of, in the sense of cognition, understanding of the world, or the moral aspects, or sometimes even in the aspects of the physical, besides the physical development, we see the growth in all these aspects. Now, keeping apart the theories of development of how an individual progresses in his characteristic features, there are other things which we should consider as the developmental psychologists about the various factors which are affecting the developmental process. We know that the individual process from one stage to another, but at the same time, there are certain factors which actually help you develop. That is what actually contributes to one's development. If we consider these, we know that there are biological factors, that is the heredity and genetics. The heredity and genetics of an individual also helps how you grow. At the same time, there are the environmental factors. There are physical factors, there are psychological factors, and there are also brain chemistry and sex determinants. All these help in actually formation of an individual and how he progresses from one stage to another. Now let's come to hereditary and genetic factors. You know that there is a genetic code, and at the time of conception, when the zygote is formed by the mating of the sex cells, that it results in formation of 23 cells from the female gamete and 23 chromosomes from the male gamete, resulting in the zygote formation, which has about 46 chromosomes, 23 from the mother and 23 from the father. Now, these are paired. So we can say 23 pairs of 46 chromosomes. And these are actually, they are formed through a process of, these 23 are actually formed in the, this is a completely different process of cell formation. We know that the body is composed of cells. So many cells are lost every day. The skin cells or the other cells, the blood cells are being formed every 120 to 90 days. So all these things happen in the body, but at the same time, the sex cells are formed by different sort of division. That is, instead of developing normal body cells, we have the division, cell division occurring, resulting in the same number of chromosomes. That is how it is known as the mitosis. But in the sex cell formation, there is a different type of division where the division is reduction. It is done by half. Therefore, there are, instead of normal cells have 46 chromosomes, but in the sex cells, we have only 23 chromosomes. So the sperm cell has 23 chromosomes and the egg cell or the ovum has the 23 chromosomes. So that there is a reduction division from not what we call the 46 chromosome cells. So normal cells have 46 chromosomes, the sex cells have 23 chromosomes. And when there is fertilization or zygote formation, there is again the union of 23 from the male and 23 chromosomes from the female, and the fusion of these two gametes results in the zygote, and here we have 46 chromosomes. This is a normal condition, and this zygote multiplies again through the process of mitosis, that is normal cell division, and the whole individual is formed. And this fetus tries to develop from zygote. There is a stage, the developmental stage. Next stage is fetus, and the fetus develops in the fallopian tube and the uterus. It travels from the fallopian tube to the uterus and is launched in the uterus, and the fetus grows there. It continues to grow until it is throughout its lifespan. It grows there and is again later, after delivery, the person, an individual, is born. We know that the sex determination is because of these chromosomes. It is so that the female gametes have 22 normal chromosomes plus one sex determining chromosomes. They are X and X. In the male gamete, it is the normal 22 chromosomes plus one pair of sex determining chromosomes known as X and Y. So if the X of the male cell fuses with the X, the cell carrying X of the female cell, now we know it results in XX and results in the female child. Whereas if the sex cell of the males, the sperm having Y chromosome, tries to mate with that of the X chromosome bearing sex cell of the female, that is ovum, then the X and Y may result in the male child. So the XX combination of the chromosomes that will result in a female child, and XY combination will result in a male child. So again, I would repeat that normal cells would have 46 chromosomes. A meiotically undergone division in male may result in two types of sperm cells, that is one carrying X and one carrying Y. That is because there is a reduction division. There are only now 23 chromosomes in the sex cells, in the sperm cells. One may have all the 22 cells plus X, and some cells may be having 22 cells plus Y chromosome. But in the females, it is 22 cells, sex chromosomes plus one X cell, X chromosome, or it may be 22 chromosomes plus one X chromosome. So it is X only in females and X and Y sperm cells in males. So depending on the combination, whether the sperm cell has X or Y, if they combine with the or made with the, there is a fuse with the X cell of the female, it may result, if the combination is XX, it is the female child. If the combination is XY, it is the male child. So determining on the genetical factors, it may result in XX or XY combination, and this may result in an individual who may be either male or female. So because it is determined in this way, the individual development is also based on the combination of the chance factor, that is what sperm cell will fuse with what egg. This is again a random, what we call a spontaneous, or it's a matter of chance, which cell fuses with which. Why we are discussing this is, based on this, the individual may be either male or female. The genetic principles is the genes are there on the chromosomes, and depending on how the genes are there, what sort of genes are there, or the cells, what sort of the genes are placed on the chromosomes actually, depending on the genetical inheritance also, a person's characteristics may differ. They may be physical characteristics like eye color, hair color, or the body height, weight, etc. But at the same time, there also may be some factors which by certain things, they may also result in the mental abilities or the intellectual abilities or knowledge retaining abilities, memory, comprehension. These may also be indirectly related to some of the chromosomes. So a person, how he is able to behave is again dependent on the genetical factors. So an individual, when we talk about an individual, how he grows, first the sex is determined by the genetical things, genetical factors, genetical principles. After the sex determination, we also have the genes. I was talking earlier about some set of pairs of chromosomes. I was saying the sperm cells have 22 pairs of chromosomes plus one set of sex chromosomes, that is XY. And again, I was saying that the female cells were having 22 pairs of normal sets of chromosomes and one pair of sex chromosomes, that is X and X. So these pairs of cells are known as alleles. But when there is chromosome reduction, that is meiosis or happening, that is sex cell formation, I said there will be 22 plus X in some cells, 22 plus Y in some cells, in sperm cells, whereas in female cells, they may have 22 plus X and 22 plus X. So this is how the cells are formed. There is a reduction division. From normal 46 chromosomes, we see the gametes or the sex cells having only 23 chromosomes. This is known as reduction division or meiosis. Now, we know that these genes, what are there on the chromosomes during the cell division or the meiotic division, there may be certain disturbances or problems, and therefore sometimes we see that there are also some distortions in the genes which may result in the different characteristics of individuals. We know that the DNA is the fundamental factor. What is the DNA? It is the chemical, what we call chemical, that is actually present in the genes. So the DNA is a double helix sort of organic molecule, and here it is actually is the contributing to the functioning of the cells totally. We know all these are important because we know sometimes there are dormant genes and recessive genes. Dormant genes are those which are dominant, and the recessive genes actually are not expressive. But in some other generation, they may be expressive. So depending on the genes an individual gets or he obtains, and these in genes may actually form these characteristics. It may result in certain diseases, and also sometimes if they're expressive more, they're expressed, but they may be actually not shown in one generation, but may be expressed in other generations. The dormant genes are actually expressed, whereas the recessive genes, they may not be expressed, but they are there underlying. So depending on what sort of genes one is getting inherited, we see that the gene expression results in the individual behavior. For example, we see that most of the genes are actually, they're the triggers for the biochemical reactions in the body. So, for example, we consider the eye color. there are a number of enzymatic reactions, or the way when we see the world, there are a number of reactions going on in the eye. The light falls on the eye, certain things happen, etc. But if there is a genetic mutation, if one of these biochemical, what we call reactions is obstructed, automatically we see that the vision is affected. So there are a number of things, our digestion, our circulation, and nervous action, all these are controlled by the genes. So genes are there in the body. The growth and development of an individual also based on the genetical expression of the things. That is, the genes are involved in the control and the coordination of the various biochemical reactions in the body. So what sort of genes an individual he is getting, based on these, the individual will gradually express or develop. The developmental lifespan of an individual is dependent on these things. For example, a person may inherit a blue color, and sometimes a person may inherit a brown color. Now, this is because of the dominant gene. So similarly, the blonde hair, we see that it is again, we can see sometimes. So these are all genetical factors which determine. We see that the brown hairs always dominates that of the blonde hair. So depending on the parental features, one gene may dominate the other. So what I'm saying is, when a zygote is there, the combination of the parental and paternal as well as the maternal genes are there. We see again that there are two cells are formed. That is, we see the 46 cells combination in the zygote. The sperm cell and the ovum may be having the reduced chromosome number, but on the formation of zygote, we see the restoration of the 46 chromosomes. And these continuously divide to form the fetus. Now, we see that in these alleles, or the genes that are retained from the father and the mother, which are heredited, and we see that inherited from the father and mother, we see that one color or one thing may dominate the other color. So, and that is expressed. So, genetical expression, genetical dominance, genetical mutations, genetical changes, these actually determine how an individual is born and how he develops certain features throughout his life. Now, sometimes we know that sometimes so many genes are inherited, and the effects may be a combination of these, and this we know as the polygenic inheritance. Sometimes we see that the genetic imprinting is seen, that is, whatever is inherited from the mother or father, that is known as the genetic imprinting. But we know sometimes that there are chromosomal abnormalities occurring in the children. This is because during the cell division or differentiation process, here the cell differentiation we call, because they are actually getting reduced. If normal division is normal division, cells divide and they have both 46 chromosomes as it happens in the body cells or the somatic cells. But when there is genetical, what we call this sort of differentiation, where the sperm cells are getting differentiated, we see that certain chromosomal abnormalities occur. One of these conditions is the Down syndrome. Here, this is because there is an extra copy of chromosome. What happens in the Down syndrome? We see that it is characterized by round face, a somewhat attenuated skull, that is, skull is somewhat lesser in shape, and also we see an extra fold of skin over the eyebrows and these eyelids. And we see that there is a protruding tongue, short limbs, short stature, and retardation of the motor and other activities. And this will actually result in somewhat, the person is not understanding, he is somewhat reduced in physical stature. This is resolved because of the result of an extra chromosome. So having an additional extra chromosome or deletion of a chromosome may result in so many chromosome abnormalities in the individual. Let us consider other abnormality known as the Klinefelter syndrome. Here, the male child may inherit an extra X chromosome, which will result in underdeveloped breasts and somewhat tall in stature. And sometimes we have Fragile X syndrome, where we have the X syndrome, which is the 23rd pair, either segmented or deformed. This will lead to mental retardation, learning disability, and also problems in memory and planning. We also have the Turner syndrome, where the X chromosome is missing and or deleted, because this will result in infertility and difficulty in mathematics and also verbal ability. Now also we have XYY syndrome, in which there is extra Y chromosome. And here, because of this extra Y chromosome, the person, the individual may be showing aggression or violence, which is beyond the normal range. There are also other genetically related disorders known as the phenylketonuria. Here, because of the phenylalanine is an amino acid, it is not metabolized properly. This will result in mental retardation and hyperactivity. And we also here in phenylketonuria, we see the urine production is also somewhat different because it comes in black color. This is because the phenols are actually excreted through the urine. This will also result in certain problems, mental retardation. Then there is another disorder known as the sickle cell anemia, where the blood cells are not formed properly. Instead of having the round shape, they are somewhat phased as a sickle shape. And this sort of sickle shape will result in having reduced hemoglobin. And because there is reduced hemoglobin, the oxygen is not taken properly in the body. And this will make them somewhat incapable of carrying oxygen. And when oxygen is not there, we see that several organs get they sort of die, and most of the blood is not there for the organs, and they gradually it leads to the death of the individual. We also have certain other sort of disorders which are associated with the genetic abnormalities, that they are cystic fibrosis, hemophilia, Huntington's disease, spina bifida, etc. Now we also see Tay-Sachs disease also. Now, when we consider the brain chemistry, we know that the brain is again dependent. It is the main reason how we psychologically function and the smooth functioning of every day. The brain lobes are also very important for functioning of the and the development of the individual, because the brain is the place where there are many glands situated. The master gland that controls the whole body is present near the brain, near the medulla, and that is the pituitary gland. We know that all the neurotransmitters, the nerves are actually, which are the forming the backbone of the body and trying to instigate us into doing various activities, the neural activities, which means with the motor activities or the sensory activities or the way in which we respond to the environment, all these dependent on the nerve cells or the neurons or the neural system, and or brain and neural system we call this, and this also may be sometimes affected, and this will also determine how an individual behaves. For example, we know that there are several neurotransmitters or chemicals released in the brain which actually try to control the whole body. Especially the pituitary gland tries to promotes various hormones which again control other hormone producing organs in the body. We call them as the different glands, and these glands are actually affected by the pituitary body. They provide so many secretions or hormones, and these hormones in turn try to control our behavior, our moods, and other psychological factors. And we know that in the brain, there are certain chemicals or neurotransmitters. Serotonin is one of those. Serotonin is one which actually tries to make you happy. And a person, how he wakes up, how he sleeps, and his wakefulness and his eating behavior, his sleep patterns are also determined by these neurotransmitters. Also, we have see that this neurotransmission is a feature which actually occurs throughout the life. We see that the individual, because of the different environmental factors he may be acting on, the neural factors also may vary. For example, the biochemical interaction in the brain is one of the things which is very much puzzling even today, and scientists are trying to unravel how these interact in various ways. Dopamine is another substance which is also found to be helpful in all these. Now we have the master gland or the pituitary gland, which tries to affect all the other glands in the body, that they are known as the hormone producing glands or endocrine glands. And because these glands release these hormones directly into the bloodstream. For example, we have the growth hormone, which actually is helpful for what we call the development of the muscles, bones, and other tissues in the body. And we have the adrenal gland, which is known as the which produces adrenaline, and also is epinephrine and norepinephrine, which actually help. It is known as the flight or the fight gland, or it gives the flight or fight response, in the sense the individual is able to go away from some threatening situations because of the this gland. It either gives rise to fear, or where the individual tries to fly away or go away from that situation, that is the flight uh, hormone. And sometimes the individual, when he knows he can't go away, he tries to fight back. So this is the response that makes the individuals to fight or flight is the adrenaline. The adrenal gland is helpful, which is located, this adrenal gland is situated near the kidney, and it is helpful in producing the reactions that make the individual survive. Then we have got the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland produces thyroxine. It is somewhat said to be helpful to make the individual sensitive to light and other features, and also said to be helpful for the individual in their aging. And it is actually one determines to a certain extent, according to certain scientists, which determines the age of an individual, how long an individual will survive. Also, pancreas are the other glands which are there near the digestive system, and these pancreas produce the insulin, which helps the individual to what we call the insulin manages the glucose or the sugar in the body, and this helps in the glucose metabolism of the body. This is very much necessary, and if it is not produced in enough quantities, we know that it results in the diabetes. Also, we have got testosterone, or the male sex hormone, produced by the gonads in the males and females. The testosterone are produced in both males and females. Testosterone is produced more in males rather than females. It is produced in lesser quantities in females. Also, we have other hormones which are sex specific. That is, some are produced only in males and some are produced only in females. For example, you have got progesterone hormone and secretin hormone in females. The cortisol is another stress hormone produced in the adrenal gland, which regulates the stress of an individual. So in this way, there are several hormones that are responsible for various functions of the individual. Besides these factors, the chromosomal, the genetic factors, and the neural factors, which again are related to genetics, and also the hormones, we have got the psychosocial factors. What are the psychosocial factors? How long a mother is exposed to the outside circumstances, the environmental factors, or how they are related to the what we call different features in the environment, that may also cause the changes in how an individual develops. For example, if we were to consider the prenatal development of the child, the prenatal development is the stage where the fetus is there in the mother, and there is growth stages of the fetus. And here we find that certain prescription drugs or antibiotics or antidepressants may actually inhibit the growth process of the individual. For example, aspirin drug, if taken in high doses, it may result in neonatal bleeding. That is, the child may bleed. Also, consumption of alcohol during pregnancy, it will lead to what we call fetal alcohol syndrome, that is characterized by small head, malformation of limbs, and also heart, joints, face, all these. Also, we have cognitive deficits, that is the brain related development is also affected because of the alcohol consumption, heart damage, and retarded growth of the body. So consumptions of nicotine, that is trying to smoke, that is smoking actually, smoking that is tobacco or has nicotine, and this nicotine may actually affect the child. That is, we may see that the small and permanent premature births are seen sometimes. There may be permanent damage to the child, effective cognitive functioning. There may be deficits in physical growth, etc. So other drugs that are stimulants, hallucinogens, and narcotics, the drugs that are being taken by the world, modern youth, all these may actually result in premature births, low birth weights, miscarriages, lags in behavior and intellectual development. All these are seen. Now, when we see that there is what we call the marriages marriage is taking place between incompatible blood groups, especially uh, like RH type. RH is one blood factor. It is seen in the blood of the individuals. And if there is an incompatibility of the blood group, we know that may result in the miscarriage of the child or the fetus, or there may be sometimes stillbirth or anemia may be seen. Also, we have jaundice and what we call heart defects, the brain damage, all these may result soon after the birth. So we should know that the incompatibility factors of the blood should be tested prior marriage so that the RH factor and also other any sexually diseases, they may be identified beforehand. The maternal diseases are also there. We know that the German measles, also known as rubella, if one contacts this disease during pregnancy, it may result in the malformation of the child, and we can see the blindness, deafness, heart defects, and other mental retardation in the child. Now, also there are maybe some sexually transmitted diseases or STDs like syphilis, which may cause blindness and mental retardation in the child. Therefore, we have sometimes AIDS or acquired immunodeficiency, which even though the parents have, it may be carried through the bloodstream to the child. Sometimes it may also result in the death of the child if enough antibodies are not produced. The gonorrhea and syphilis are other diseases which may actually are the sexually transmitted diseases, and they may cause blindness during birth, and herpes causes damage to the eyes and the brain. Also, we have various diseases which affect the mother, like chickenpox, hepatitis, hypertension or BP, high BP, influenza, mumps. They also have the negative effects on the growth of the child. That is when they are in a fetal condition. We also have different environmental factors which impact the development of the individual. For example, some of the environmental factors are exposure to X-rays or environmental pollution from industries and automobiles, and pesticides and fertilizers in the food consumed, etc. But we know that these are becoming more in the world or in the environments today, and therefore it is a bit difficult because one is to be considered with the social dilemma here that the world is completely now full of pollutants. So one has to take enough care. But in spite of this, these also may result in the birth complications of the and birth defects of the individuals. And is what environmentalists are trying to say again and again, that the future generations may be affected because of the high pollution rates. Also, the maternal age, what age the mother bears the child, it also has an effect on the development of the individual. For example, we know that in the females, if the age is beyond 35 years, there are certain risk factors. That is, the chromosomal abnormalities may occur because of certain what we call differentiation division, that is meiosis. Some abnormalities may be there, some deviations may be there, and this will result in the chromosomal abnormal child. The safest time to bear a child is somewhere between the 18 to 35 years. Also, we have the maternal malnutrition. We know that the mother has to be fed well so that the folic acid and vitamin B and proper sort of injections have to be given during the pregnancy or stage. And this will actually have a bearing on the what we call the weight of the child and their general development. Sometimes if it doesn't happen, there is no proper diet as well as nutrients given like folic acid and other vitamin B. And this may result in preterm babies that they're born before the due time. And the obesity also, if mother has obesity, it also may be one of the risk factors. Sometimes there may be maternal stress. The mother carrying the child may be having some sort of stress and anxiety, and this prolonged chronic anxiety may result in the underdevelopment of the baby. If the mother is happy conceiving, the risk factors are also minimized to a great extent. We also have the paternal factors, the father's age, nutrition, lifestyle, and attitudes which affect the development, and the father's attitude also, and how others feel towards the mother. They're also very important, and they play an important role. And also men's exposure to lead, radiation, pesticides, petrochemicals. This may also result in sometimes in the abnormalities in the sperm. So it is why the growing fetus has to be taken care in proper ways. And also sometimes the father, if he's smokes, the mother may be a passive, she may be undergoing the passive smoking, and this may also be a sort of risk to the fetus. And what sort of care one gives in the prenatal stage is very important. There are risks for the fetus while it is growing up. And also, sometimes we see that the birth process, that is the perinatal environment, is also very important. What sort of environment or the hygienic conditions the mother gives birth, that is also very important. And we also, the experience of the medical practitioners and the attention from them, this also develops the baby care. Now, there are several types of birth, and these type of birth, that is either the Lamaze method, where the mother is educated about the process of the birth, and there is natural delivery is being supported in several ways. Sometimes there is cesarean delivery, where the mother baby is taken from the uterus by making an incision on the mother's abdomen, and breech birth, in which the child is born buttocks first and later the head. They now in these different stages, depending on how they are born, it may result in the being exposed to the environment, having less of oxygen or anoxia, which may affect the brain. Sometimes they may more of oxygen. So how they are actually, the circumstances in which the birth occurs also has a bearing on the development of the individual, and how he develops both intellectually as well as emotionally. For example, if there is an anoxia or less of oxygen when the child is getting born, and it is lead to brain damage, cerebral palsy, or mental retardation or cognitive deficits, because even the child undergoes certain stress here, both physical as well as trauma. Also, recent trends in the childbirth are water birth, music therapy, massaging methods, etc. Medication is also given to mothers, and the medication also may actually be helpful sometimes, but sometimes the medication has during the labor period may have somewhat potential negative effect. The support, the physical support and the emotional support the mother gets from the family and from the father, and also this also has a way of making the delivery process go smooth, and therefore the mother's preparedness and her mental stability also makes it easy to deal with fears, worries, and be strong and deal with the process of the birth. Also, the postnatal environment is also very important. The physical adjustment and postnatal care is very important. The mother requires the emotional and psychological, what we call adjustment to the world. And sometimes we see the mothers getting into depression after the birth of the child. This is because they either feel sadness or anxiety or despair, and they have to take the care of the baby, which is a new circumstance. So sometimes bonding and attachment are also formed with the child during this stage. So all individuals do not take this process of the birth of the child normally. Sometimes they go into depression, that is postpartum depression. We see the mothers are somewhat affected because they're no longer carrying the child. They feel it different away from them. At the same time, they feel their status is somewhat changed in the world. They are unable to deal with the circumstances, and this will result in sort of depression, which also has to be addressed. So the process of bonding and attachment are there. So how gradually the child is attached to the mother, that again will determine how healthy the child will be. Other factors affecting development are, we have an individual, both what we call cognitively and biologically, when he matures, we see that there are different life experiences of the individual. When an individual grows, he develops somewhat abuse, or sometimes there may be death of a parent, or divorce, accident, illness. All these factors also have a role in the development of an individual. So therefore, we can say that the development of an individual right from the birth may dependent on the several features like the hereditary factors, the environmental factors, the factors that are maybe due to the genetical factors, the chromosomal conditions, as well as the physical conditions of the mother, or of the physical, how well they are able to deal with the environment, and also other factors, that is the social support and the socio-economical conditions, the parenting styles, attachment, socialization process, the schooling process, and one when grows up, the neighborhood, what sort of religion or relations one has with other people, the culture, the language, all these have a bearing on the development of the individual. Now, we'll deal with one of the aspects that is seen in the world. There is a general discussion among the psychologists, the developmental psychologists, whether what actually helps the individual become a better individual. Is it the nature or nurture? Especially the educational psychologists who are concerned with the education, they try to understand whether the individual is becoming a better individual because of the nature or the nurture. The nature is the environment. If the environment here means not only the physical but the actual environment in which the parents, the society, the teachers, the others or the elders actually help the individual to grow and understand the world and develop the social and cultural features in the person, and the individual grows as a well-being in the because of the social environment as well as the cultural environment, and he tries to adjust to the best of his ability. This is the nature. Now, nature also determines that there is a sort of genetical aspect to the development of an individual. But the nurture aspect is environmental, that is, what sort of care the parents take, what sort of care the society, what sort of protection the society gives, etc. We know that it is understood that generally all the individuals have a the humans especially have the same genetic component, but the individuals vary, and this in difference is because of 0.001% change in the genetics. But at the same time, we see the individuals vary. So genetical components, although all are unique in a sense, but at the same time, the individuals also vary because of the genes or the chromosomes they have or the different developmental stages that they pass right from the fetal stage. Whereas the nurture, if all the individuals may be having for example, we consider the twins, although they may be having the same sort of birth, but depending on the environmental conditions or in the conditions in which they are growing up, that is the nurturing, that is the food they get, the treatment they get, the interactions they are provided with, the social environments they are given, they grow up in, all these also may have a bearing. So we try to understand how an individual he develops. Is it because of the genetic factors or the hereditary factors, or is it due to because of the environmental factors? That is, what sort of protection we try to give, what sort of safeguards we try to take, or what sort of external environmental provisions we try to create to the individual. So now these two are different. There is a continuous discussion among the individuals. Some say it is due to heredity that individuals either behave in a better manner, are more intellectually superior, but in sometimes it is due to the nature. It is not due to nature, but due to nurture, how one actually raises the children, that they develop into better individuals. We have also this behavior genetics, trying to understand the behavior of the individuals. We try to understand the individual behavior based on, for example, the identical and fraternal twins. Similarities is seen to a certain extent. When the genetic makeup is reduced, we see that they behave in a similar manner. But at the same time, we have also seen that the identical twins are more similar in nature than the fraternal twins. Also, we find that the similarity in environment is also better for individual growth. So this talks that providing better environment may result in the better behavior of the individual. But in spite of all this, we know that the heredity and environment relationship is such a relationship that both are interrelated and both have to be taken into cognizance when we try to understand. We have to see that there is interaction between both these factors, heredity as well as environment, and parents, how they feel about their genetic predisposition and their way of living also actually helps the individuals to grow. For example, if the parents are not sociable, you do not expect the children to be also very sociable. So they do not enjoy socializing. So we do not know, but at the same time, the parental upbringing, it is somewhat what we call passive in nature and somewhat evocative. And we see that the genotype as well as the environment correlation is there to a great extent. And we cannot say that it is one feature which is actually determining a particular individual development. Sometimes there are also shared and non-shared environmental experiences. That is, when there are siblings, they share a common environment, whereas people coming from different backgrounds, they do not have the same sort of environmental experiences. So siblings have the same siblings, that is, the children of the same parents may, of a parents of a single parent may have some common characteristic features. So the individuals also different in their attitudes, and because of their schooling experiences, the way they are treated in their families, the relationships with friends, etc. So sometimes we may have people coming from the urban background may be having some shared experiences, whereas the people from the rural background may be having some shared experiences. And there is also this particular thing that their genes and their role in environment, how genes behave to environment, is also important for the growth of an individuals, because genes are also, after all, organic molecules. They also tend to change with the environment, and depending on their change in the environment, they may also cause changes in the behavior of an individual, because it is not we individuals, but it's sometimes genetical changes due to environment may also lead to changes in the individual. This is known as the epigenetic view. So finally, we have come that there are to the conclusion where we try to understand that the developmental factors are related due to a number of factors, most of them hereditary, some of them environmental. There is always interrelationship with the both, and it is not completely under our control, but these factors may be manipulated to a certain extent so that a child may grow up as a better individual, a fetus may develop well, and also there are chances for an individual to be a happy and healthy individual. And the next things we'll try to be dealing is with the different stages of development. In that, we'll be trying to deal with prenatal, infancy, and childhood. I request you to go through these chapters briefly. We see that the changes what happen in the infancy or the fetal stage, they may have a bearing on the development of the individual, and it also leads to successful social development as well as the physical development, and also the gradual physical and other psychological development. We also know that the gradual changes in the infant stages may have a bearing on the later stages of development, that is adolescence as well as adulthood stages, and the even the old age. And these stages gradually pass on. We'll try to consider these stages step by step, and what are the several risk factors, because every individual life at every stage is associated with certain risk factors. There are also certain roles that one has to play, and besides these roles, if they are able to contribute successfully to their earning their own livelihood as well as making a contribution to society, the individual feels satisfied. And it is with the individual satisfaction we are trying to relate the social development of an individual. And here again, in the next class, we'll try to deal with the different stages, that is the infancy, the prenatal, the childhood stages, as well as the adolescent stages. With this, I conclude here.